Hello everyone and welcome back to another day of this November's Noirvember challenge, in which I am discussing several film noir classics that I think you can't miss. And today's movie represents exactly what I just said. It is another fantastic heist movie, another beautiful, fatal heist attempt by a group of skilled, down on their luck, no good nicks. One of the best tropes of film noir, if you ask me. And as you can see by the title of this video, today we're going to talk about The Killing, released in 1956 and directed by Stanley Kubrick.
Give or take a few thousand, I figure the loot on this deal at $2 million. There should be that much in the track offices.
If last year I talked about Criss, or its more direct precedent, in my opinion, the Asphalt jungle, in today's video I will talk about a movie that is one of the most paradigmatic examples of classic heist movies. It is no coincidence that in both The Asphalt Jungle and The Killing we have Sterling Hayden as the protagonist, setting the tone for both in this fatalistic film noirs. Of course, if we have to discuss The Killing, we have to start by talking about its director Stanley Kubrick, one of the most influential filmmakers of the second half of the 20th century, who, much like John Huston, his predecessor, wanted to be in control, in full creative control of his movies. In the case of The Killing, he acted mainly as a director, but also as a producer, screenwriter, and even as a cinematographer. And except for the cinematographer role, these are pretty much the same roles that, again, John Huston had during the making of The Asphalt Jungle. The Killing was in fact Stanley Kubrick's third movie, the first actually to have a proper Hollywood budget, which resulted from the collaboration between Stanley Kubrick, who was only 28 at the time, and producer James B. Harris. Both had just formed the Harris Kubrick Pictures Corporation and had the rights for a novel by Lionel White called Clean Break, which was perfect for Kubrick to translate into a movie. As we have established, Stanley Kubrick was very adamant at preserving his creative independence as a filmmaker, and that is something that was not always understood or respected by producers. This caused several frictions throughout his career, but in this case, James B. Harris was always a very supportive producer and effectively helping him launch his career, producing films like The Killing, Paths of Glory, and Lolita. Also, with the help of Harris, they got financing support from United Artists after they also expressed interest in the novel, in Lionel White's novel, and eventually participating in the project by, again, financing and distributing The Killing. This was both a blessing and a disadvantage for The Killing because it got to be a Hollywood production, but at the time of its release, much like what happened with Nightmare Alley, which is a movie that we comment on last week, the company didn't quite believe that much in The Killing, resulting in its very hasty premiere as the second half of a double feature with Richard Fleischer's Bandido as the main draw, remaining in theaters for a very short period of time and not having, again, a proper release. As you can imagine, The Killing was not a box office success at all. It didn't make much money, but it did generate for Stanley Kubrick a lot of good reviews and respect from fellow filmmakers, actors who noticed him, and after the release of The Killing started contacting him for future projects. So it was The Killing along with Paths of Glory, the two movies that launched and solidified Stanley Kubrick's career as a filmmaker, establishing him as a genius of the medium. For the casting of The Killing, Stanley Kubrick, who had watched many film noir classics, and quite specifically, again, The Asphalt Jungle, thought of Sterling Hayden for the part of Johnny Clay. Aside from Sterling Hayden, If you watch The Killing, you can recognize many faces that have appeared multiple times in film noir classics. It is one of the best supporting ensembles that you can find in a noir film. I have, of course, to mention Marya E, whom Stanley Kubrick had also seen in the film The Narrow Margin and was dead on fixated on getting her for the part she plays in The Killing, so much so that he waited for her to complete the production of Swamp Women, incidentally the first movie of filmmaker Roger Corman. We also have in The Killing lovely Colleen Gray, whom we've just seen and talked about for Nightmare Alley. Elijah Cook Jr., an absolute favorite. Truly, Elijah Cook Jr. was perfect no matter the role or the genre. Aside from them, we have other familiar faces like J.C. Flippin, Ted DeCorsia, Joe Sawyer, Crazy Timothy Carey, Dorothy Adams, Jay Adler, Vince Edwards, or the revelation with the heavy Kola Kwariani. In terms, as I was saying, about the relevance of The Killing as a film noir classic, it is most recognizable for its non-linear structure, meaning that it doesn't have a traditional beginning, middle, and ending. It is more a case of carrying time differently and jumping from one character, one perspective to another, which was quite innovative at the time of its release, something that comes from the book, from Lionel White's novel, and something that was pretty much in line with the vision Stanley Kubrick had. So it was, again, the perfect match, and again, the masterful way in which Stanley Kubrick plays out these different pieces of the same puzzle was again something that stood out at the time of its release, and that is still quite impressive today. Something that has certainly influenced most notably directors like Quentin Tarantino, and this is something also that is quite apparent when you watch The Killing. Also, this type of unorthodox, non-linear structure was something that bothered, to say the least, United Artists right before its release. So they insisted, Stanley, on editing everything at, again, a more linear, traditional structure of a film, which in the end turned out to be even more confusing. So Stanley got his way eventually, and the film got to maintain the structure and the vision that the novel and then again Stanley Kubrick had. Stanley Kubrick really belonged to that new generation of filmmakers who wanted to step out of the rigid control from the studios and wanted the directors to be the author of the movies in their own right. Other confrontations that Stanley Kubrick had during the making of The Killing was again with the cinematographer appointed for the film, Lucien Ballard, at the time a very experienced, seasoned cinematographer, and who in many instances didn't see eye to eye to, again, the more innovative ways that Stanley Kubrick had. And that's why I said at the beginning of this video that Kubrick eventually had the role of cinematographer also, because he got in fact to do that in scenes in which, again, Ballard had a total different approach. Being a photographer himself initially, Stanley Kubrick again had a very keen eye when it comes to, again, photography for a film. Ballard was, as I said, a very experienced cinematographer, having started in the 30s, and his career really spanned until the late 70s. And precisely his most remembered contributions came during the second half of his career with films such as True Grit or The Wild Bunch. He also had a few issues with writer Jim Thompson, who was a hard-boiled crime writer, nowadays considered one of the finest, even before fellow authors like Dashiell Hammett or Raymond Chandler. Thompson participated in the script, helping adapt the novel, but he was only credited for having contributed with the dialogues, which was one of the controversies, I should say, of the making of The Killing. It appears also that Jim Thompson was really skilled at this type of non-linear narration, so his contribution was beyond just dialogues. Eventually, they got to work again for Paths of Glory. In any case, the script is fantastic. What I really love about The Killing, aside from its fantastic casting, is on the one hand the fatalist point of view that I always enjoy in film noir, but also particularly with The Killing, the irony of the ending of the film, which I'm obviously not going to spoil, but I think is one of the greatest endings, in my opinion, in film noir. Something that also Kubrick has in common with John Huston in terms of what their films were about is the idea of human fallibility that again John Huston explored in practically all of his movies, and that's something that we also see in The Killing. So if you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend you to do so. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for joining me in this Noirvember challenge. Take care, stay safe, and see you all very soon with another noir video. Bye!